What's going on, everyone? So I've got a little bit of a different video for you all today. Normally I'm playing some Carabas games or I am talking about the news about Star Wars Unlimited, but I wanted to answer a question or talk about a topic today that I've gotten a lot in my comments, Discord messages, in person, etc. And that was, what set do I think was better? And do I think Shadows of the Galaxy is a good set compared to what we had previously and overall for Star Wars Unlimited? Now, also, I'm going to have my own little artistic twist on this and also add in, do I think the new set Twilight of the Republic is going to be on par of Spark Rebellion or Shadows of the Galaxy or worse or whatever my opinions are. We're going to add that to at the end. So first things first, I want to talk about this poll. Now, when I put this out, we had a lot of votes, 1.1k votes, pretty good for Star Wars Unlimited in general. About 2 weeks ago, or close to 2 weeks ago, well, by the time this video comes out, it's been about 2 weeks. Most of you say Spark Rebellion was a better set than Shadows of the Galaxy. Now, I'm not sure what reason you personally, if you voted Spark Rebellion, went with when you looked at this poll. Okay, I specifically loved Luke, and there's no Luke in set 2, so Spark Rebellion is better. Maybe that was your reason. I have no idea. But what I do know is the most common reasons I get cited for liking Spark Rebellion more than Shadows of the Galaxy, and that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today, as well as give my opinion. Now, for me, I am the equal camp. I personally actually enjoy the more in-depth characters that we're getting and characters that are not necessarily mainstream. I think that's pretty exciting for the game in general and just what characters I get to use. I enjoy specifically building around some of the more unique themes, and overall, I found like the card quality in terms of like the development process that went into it was pretty equal. Now, there are some issues I have with it, no doubt, but there's also some issues I have with Spark Rebellion. That's what we're here to talk about today. Now, the first thing I want to mention is, what is the biggest reason why people think Spark Rebellion is better than Shadows of the Galaxy? And the biggest reason that I get cited is Spark Rebellion felt more cohesive of Star Wars Unlimited than incorporating Shadows of the Galaxy into the game. And this has a few reasons. For one, and the biggest reason, the game was a single set. So because the sets are designed to work with each other, especially for a limited format like drafting, for those of you that don't draft, it has to do with opening packs and building a deck out of those specific packs by drafting cards. So you take one and pass it to your left with ideally a table of 8. Well, in order to do that, you usually want to have a high synergistic set within itself. And because Star Wars Unlimited was entirely one set, well, the whole of Star Wars Unlimited synergized with the whole of Star Wars Unlimited because it's one set. So that's one big thing. The second thing also, though, is set 1 had much more generic leaders. And I agree with this point in that set 1 leaders, in my opinion, are built better for Star Wars Unlimited than the set 2 leaders overall in the game right now. And we could see this with the meta in terms of recent tournaments and what leaders are being kind of played. If you look at the set 2 leaders, there are a few generalized ones. For example, Han Solo doesn't really have any requirements except you're playing heroism and aggression. Any unit you could play with one less cost. That's pretty cool. There are some synergies with it, such as, playing grit cards if you want, but most often than not, you're just playing this and playing more expensive units a turn earlier. That seems pretty good, right? That's just like base level good. Another card that's pretty good, something like, well, Kira. Anything that you play, you could deal 2 damage to it to give it a shield. Seems pretty good, right? The more specific cards, Hondo, must play Smuggles in order to get any value. Bosk, must have bounties either on your opponent's side of the field or your side of the field in order to do anything, but more specifically on your opponent's side of the field because your Bosk flip doesn't do anything if they don't have bounties. Cad Bane must play underworld cards in order to get any value from that. Mandalorians must play upgrades to do anything. Lando must play smuggle cards in order to do anything. Bo-Katan must play Mandalorians. Now, there's not necessarily every leader that has universal applications in set 1 either, though. But if you look, compare Krennic to Gar Saxon. Both vigilance, both villainy, both have a +1/+0 static ability, but Gar Saxon's is relegated to specifically upgraded units, whereas Krennic is just relegated to the fact that you have a damaged unit. And damaged units just happen in the game because you're going into unit combat. Period. Look at Aiden, another vigilance villainy leader. This one just says, if you defeat a unit, you get to heal one. Straight up. You're going to defeat units all the time. It heals 1, period. Not that Ida necessarily is super meta, but Krennic is actually one of the more higher tier decks. Look at another a leader, for example, the Aggression Heroism leader in, well, set 1, Sabine Wren. Dealing 1 damage to a base and having early deploy is the de facto aggro leader. And it still is one of, if not the strongest decks in the whole format. Take Han Solo, the Cunning Heroism leader. If you compare that to like the Mandalorian, for example, or Lando or Fennec. Wow, there's a lot of Cunning Heroism leaders, huh? There's 3 of them. That's crazy. Because of the starter deck. But Han, just, you could use any card in your hand for an extra resource, which is universally good. Mando, you must play upgrades, and you must have your opponent's units out to exhaust something to get any value. Lando, you must be playing smuggle cards in order to, get some extra value from his smuggle options. And Fennec, I mean, if they don't have early units, you can't really ambush anything out. And even if you are, it's pretty weak. And this is kind of one of the big issues with set 2 versus set 1. And I don't even get me started on Boba. I'm not even gonna mention him because he's an outlier. Okay, we don't even have to go to Boba in order to make my point here. But a lot of people view these leaders and it's like, well, I could play this, but I should probably play a set 1 leader because it's just better. It's just better. And that is pretty much true across the board. There are exceptions, of course, like you can't do what Han Solo is going to be doing, the new Han Solo that is, for your Han deck. If you wanted to play like old Han, for example, or if you wanted to play like Sabine, you can't do the same thing as the new Han Solo. If you wanted to play one of the more popular set 2 decks in like Rey, for example, you can't be getting experience tokens and pump up slowly like that unless you wanted to play Tarkin, but that's like a separate aspect, right? So there are some things from set 2 that are exciting and new, but for the most part, people de facto come to set 1 leaders, and in general, that's correct because of their universal applications versus this more niche areas for set 2 leaders. And this is most likely the fact of that it was a set 1 set, so they want to put the most universal leaders as they can in set 1 so that they have more options going forward, so the game feels more expansive. But the issue with this is that the set 2 leaders kind of get drowned out. And unfortunately, I agree with this because set 2 leaders are just in general weaker, and it would have been nice to see a little bit more diversification of the meta, whereas what we're seeing now is pretty much the same, just amplified with set 2 cards. And that's where we have to end up next, which is the actual card power level and card quality of set 2 versus set 1. Now, if we look at the card quality for set 2, overall, the way I view it and the way most people view it is set 2's power level is weaker than set 1 overall, but there are cards from set 2 that are so immensely powerful that they've kind of just changed the whole game. If you look at it, things like Podameron and Wrecker have made Sabine Green absolutely just an absolute nuisance. Things like Forlom and Zuckuss have potentially changed Boba Fett forever. Things like Triple Dark Raid have introduced entire archetypes. Things like Crate Dragon have also introduced entire archetypes. There are like key cards that you could point out that have completely changed the game. And set 1, while there were cards like that, you think like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, they weren't nearly as like game defining necessarily as these cards that we have in set 2. Like if I look at Sabine Green back in set 1, what was the strongest card in Sabine Green? Maybe Battlefield Marine, maybe K2SO. I would probably put it to K2SO as one of the most strong cards in set 1 Sabine Green, maybe For a Cause. If you look at set 2 Sabine Green, what are the strongest cards in Sabine Green? Wrecker, Podameron, by a large margin. Those things being ECL'd out are exceptionally powerful and have kind of made the deck the defining menace that it actually is. And this is pretty consistent throughout basically every deck. You look at like Han Green or Han Yellow or Han Green. What is the defining thing that everyone talks about when they think about that deck? Tech DJ combo, right? That's like the first thing people go to. Like, okay, if that combo is good, how good is the deck? Do I need to play around this combo, etc.? There's still things like Cunning that are really exceptional. The only deck that really didn't get like an insane upgrade from set 2, although this is debatable, is like Boba Yellow. As Boba Yellow still kind of sits in with the Cunnings, the Feth's Fire Sprays, the Bodhies, etc., etc., etc. But Tarkin, completely new deck. Double Green Palpatine, also kind of like a completely new archetype because of the options that you have with set 2. And all of these things kind of reinforce the fact that set 1 has higher power level cards, but it kind of feels a little bit, well, maybe sad to see your set 2 cards not really be played because there's better options in set 1, except for the very, very rare cards or very exceptionally powerful cards, which are honestly a little bit expensive for people to even actually access on their own. The third thing that I've heard a lot of people say is the actual thematic of the set. Now, this is really subjective, and this is one thing that I disagree with for a lot of people, and that is they're not interested in bounty hunters and like the Rays and the Kylos, you know, the sequel characters and Garth Saxons and Kiras, like all the niche movies and all the niche content. Dr. Aphra, most people don't even know about, right? And Fennec Shan, people don't even watch The Mandalorian, or like young Lando, young Han. Like none of these things resonate with a lot of people. But as someone who, personally, this is just my opinion, enjoys Star Wars a lot, I basically absorbed as much content as I could, with the exception of like reading through all the different novels and such, that I enjoy seeing all these kind of more niche down characters, seeing Hunter in the game, seeing Bo-Katan, seeing Fennec Shan, seeing Cad Bane, seeing Mandalorian, like all these cards. I mean, Mandalorian's kind of mainstream at this point now as well, but like Hondo, what a sweet card. The theme of the set was actually pretty exciting for me. And that is completely different for everyone. Because, I mean, if you look back at set 1, this is like Star Wars. You look at this card, or this set, and this is Star Wars. Emperor Palpatine versus Luke and Darth Vader, or Luke and Darth Vader, or Luke versus Darth Vader and Palpatine. You have Tarkin versus Leia. You got yourself Chewbacca and Han coming in. You got yourself, well, in some cases, for many people, actually, Sabine versus Thrawn, or Hera versus Thrawn, like Rebels and stuff. Like these are all like classic shows, classic movies, and people love that theme way more than the bounty hunter underworld type theme that we got with set 2. And that's totally fair. Now, overall, my conclusion about set 2 versus set 1 was that despite all of this, for someone who plays the game a ton, and this is what I view them as kind of equal sets, I have played literally every single one of these leaders. And when I see set 2 come out, the quality of the cards and the ability to test with a lot of these things kind of remained very similar. In fact, it might have been even a little bit better because of the combination of having the set 1 cards plus the set 2 cards all being something that you could be putting in your deck, and that testing actually ended up being pretty fun for me. And because of the cards kind of mechanics and the options that you had, ended up leading to a very enjoyable deck building process and enjoyable kind of initial experience, despite me not kind of getting the first foot in with the new Star Wars. But being able to experience all the new cards and being able to play all the different decks is really exciting. And I found that despite the fact that some leaders are a little bit less powerful, you did have the ability to kind of play with some of these leaders and create some really, really unique stuff. And each one felt like it had an identity, and that identity could be exploited to your advantage, which was kind of fun. So overall, my experience with both of them was pretty much equal. If I were to actually say like what I thought was better for the community and better for Star Wars, I would say that set 1 was 100% better for Star Wars Unlimited, and they should strive for that theme. And that's where I end up with set 3, which is the brand new Republic versus Separatist set, the Twilight of the Republic. This, I think, is going to be the hallmark set of Star Wars Unlimited coming, well, at the end of this year, but for this year. This first year of Star Wars, this Twilight of the Republic set, this is going to be the defining Star Wars set that people are going to be looking back in the early days of Star Wars and say, yeah, that set was the set that I was excited for. The two things that I'm really thinking about when I'm saying that is, one, the theme of the set. Going wide, building a bunch of units, building an army, and attacking your opponent. That's like so Star Wars. Clones versus droids, rebels versus Imperials, massive wars, massive troops, generating a big board state. And having that thematic behind it is really exciting. Token decks are amongst the most popular decks in Magic the Gathering and the Commander format, because it's just so fun to build a massive board and get a ton of value. And that seems to be the focus around set 2 in terms of mechanics. But also, because the prequels are what a lot of people are used to seeing a lot of content about, right? If you look at like all the different content that's kind of come out, it's either just after the prequels or around that time period that a lot of the content kind of reflects back on it. It's not necessarily explicitly about the Luke saga or the sequel saga, which is a little bit less exciting for a lot of people. But also, nowadays, people view Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, as one of the best Star Wars movies, whereas, well, maybe early on it wasn't what people thought. And I think this is kind of true for myself and for a lot of people, is people are just excited about the thematic of droids versus separatists synergizing well, and, droids synergizing with droids, and clones synergize with clones and Republic and stuff like that. But this is going to lead itself to a very interesting thematically focused set, very synergistic set, similar to set 1, while also introducing mechanics that I think more people are excited about than just simply, well, what we got in set 1, which honestly, the mechanics in set 1 were a lot weaker than potentially set 2 in terms of like what they were offering in terms of gameplay, right? Because we got things like Grit, Sentinel, Shielded, like classic. These are like Trample from Magic, if those of you that know what that is. But these are the type of mechanics that we got. Nothing like super exciting. The new mechanics in Bounty and Smuggle, like these are new things that we saw in Star Wars and actually have a little bit more dynamic to the game. And it looks like that's what we're going to see with Exploit and Coordinate. While simple, they also encourage a very interesting playstyle. And I think that's what people are going to be excited about, more so than what we were for set 2 and set 1. But we will have to see. Let me know what your thoughts are on set 1 versus set 2. I'm very curious to hear what you all have to say. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you all for the next one.